He displayed after the terrorist attacks of September 11, 2001 was an inspiration to me and to millions of Americans. And there is no disputing or denying his many accomplishments in the areas of diplomacy, the environment, healthcare, and education. Most important of all, he kept our country safe in a time of great peril. We're fortunate to be honored by his presence. It's an historic moment for our organization. Now, we must insist that everyone please refrain from video, recording, or taking any photographs. This morning's segment is primarily a conversation. And Doug DeVos, president of Amway, has graciously agreed to moderate. So, without further delay, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Doug DeVos and the 43rd President of the United States, George W. Bush.
Thank you for your kind remarks, and thank you for the warm welcome. Welcome to the Promised Land. Glad you're in Texas, and I thank you for inviting me. I'm looking forward to my conversation with Doug. But before I do so, I want to give you a few observations. So, a lot of my buddies back here in Texas said, or have asked, what was it like to be president and then not be president? So, I mean, literally one day you're in the Oval Office dealing with national security matters, and the next day I'm lying on the couch in Crawford, Texas. And Laura walks in. She said, "How you feeling?" I blurted, which is a tendency of mine, "Free at last." "Yeah, now you're free to do the dishes." And I said, "Wait a minute, baby, you're talking to the former president." She said, I know, but it's your new domestic policy agenda." You know, I do have a sense of freedom, I really do. I love being president. It's an awesome experience, and Doug and I hopefully will be able to, he'll be able to elicit, you know, some of the experiences that will give you a sense for what it was like. And I really love not being president. I mean, 8 years is plenty. It really is. You pour your soul into a job, and then it's over. And unlike my dad and others, I was fortunate to have 2 terms, so I knew what was going to happen. In other words, I anticipated coming home. I don't miss the fame, and I do not miss the power. I don't say that in a self-serving way. Just that's my nature. Like it's over. And I think it's important for former presidents, once it's over, to get off the stage. I have no desire to bloviate, opine, undermine my successor. In other words, the job's a hard job, really hard. I don't care who you are, it's a hard job. And I don't think it's good for the country to have a former president making the job even harder. And so I have a sense of liberation from the limelight. Now, I have emerged a couple of times. Recently, I got hung. So Laura and I went up and we put our portraits on the wall. It kind of reminded me of the time when I was walking here, when I got back to Dallas. The guy said, "Anybody ever tell you look like George W. Bush?" I said, "Yeah, you know, it's funny, it happens quite frequently." Guy kind of under his breath said, "Sure must make you mad." The portrait looked like George W. Bush. You know, it could have been, you know, Will Ferrell, Alfred E. Newman, but it was George W. Bush. And the other reason I emerged from my submersion was to sell my book. I noticed the boss is carrying it, and you know, Marketing 101 is always stay on point, right? Like when you direct sell, you just constantly remind the consumer about the product. Well, I'm direct selling my book to you. I'm not saying the pension plan isn't generous, but I guess I can make it on $200,000 a year. Anyway, so why do you write a book besides, meeting expectations? Well, here's why I wrote it. There's no such thing as accurate short-term history. There just isn't. It's impossible for any historian, pundit, opiner to possibly figure out the effects of any presidential administration without the reach of time. In other words, presidential decisions have consequences beyond the moment, certainly beyond the latest Gallup poll. Therefore, there needs to be time in order for history to properly judge what any president has done. So I've written this book as a data point, not the data point, a data point for future historians. And I thought it'd be worthwhile for future historians to know what it was like from the person who was in the eye of the storm. What was it like on September the 11th? Or what was it like to make a decision? Probably the most painful decision I made, besides putting troops into combat, was to use your money to bail out Wall Street. I'm not a big Wall Street guy. I was raised out in West Texas, Midland, Texas. We don't particularly like government. We damn sure don't like Wall Street. It's pretty populist out there, and I must confess, I've been out there long enough where it kind of soaked into my system. And yet I was confronted with the decision, depression, no depression is basically what it was, and I made the decision. I didn't want to risk depression. So I put the historian in my perspective, and as they analyze history, whether or not these decisions made sense, at least they'll have my perspective. Secondly, I've written it so that you know what it was like. September the 11th is an important moment in our nation's history, and yet it's slowly but surely becoming like Pearl Harbor. It's receding in time, not for us. We witnessed it. We lived through the trauma. But 20 years from now, that trauma will be not so much trauma, but a date, kind of a moment. And this book will hopefully be able to take people back in time, give them a sense of what it was like from one guy's perspective. It's not a very judgmental book, it's very anecdotal. And I don't spend that much time on me, biographical. Although the first decision is why I run for president. And therefore you have to kind of set the biography. You'd expect a presidential book to start off with I was born in a log cabin. Not exactly true. Although, interestingly enough, I was born in my father's sophomore year in college. And it was a gratifying moment when the marriage certificate and the birth certificate were properly aligned. Please don't tell Mother I said that. Here's the way the book starts. Can you tell me a day in which you haven't had a drink? So like when you're selling something, a lot of times you try to get the person's attention, don't you? That's what I tried to do in the book. Can you tell me a day in which you have not had a drink was a question asked to me by my loving wife. An awesome person, by the way. And she's saying to me, just tell me one day in which you haven't a drink. I'm sure none of you drank too much out there. But if you had, you'd understand my answer, which is damn right. Yeah, I can tell you. And then I literally cannot remember one day in which alcohol had not been a part of my life. I couldn't. I thought back 1 week, 2 weeks, months. I couldn't remember. And the circumstance of her and a chance meeting with Billy Graham and a reintroduction to a higher power caused me to quit drinking. And the reason I put that in the book is because in order to understand the guy making the decision to run for president, you got to understand the addictive nature of my personality and the fact that I wouldn't be standing here had I not made an important life decision, which is that my love for my family, my wife, and my girls was a lot more important than my love for alcohol. Life's interesting, so I'm signing these books, that's what you got to do. So I'm trying to be, free at last, And the book publisher says, you got to go on Oprah. I said, you got to be kidding me. Turned out to be a lovely woman, by the way, and I'm glad I did it. It helped sell books, but I'm trying to get out of the mess, trying to climb out of the swamp. I don't want to get back in it. You can't be halfway in and halfway out. I want to be free. All the stuff. And they said, no, you got to go sell it. NBC News and this guy and that person, Oprah, And it was an interesting experience because I also had to sign books. Now, you don't sign enough books to sell a lot of books. So book signing is like part of the atmosphere. There's Bush signing books. Press is center now. People lined up for books. It made the news. Obviously, the book's now available. So I'm signing, and one walks up and says, thank you for writing the book. I said, wow. Oh, you're welcome. I think I thought she was saying, wow, now I understand your embryonic stem cell decision better. Or I understand this, understand that. She said, I gave it to my son. I said, if President Bush can quit drinking, so can you, boy. The interesting thing about life, and I'm going to leave you at this point and answer Doug's questions, is you don't know who you're going to influence. And so my advice is, be responsible for the decisions you make in life. And understand that you can influence people in ways that you can't possibly imagine. I'm honored to be with you. I'm looking forward to answering the boss's questions.